Coronation Street for Friday the 11th of July reveals that what started as a harmless lie will soon turn into something much darker and more destructive, threatening to destroy the very relationships Kevin hoped to preserve. Kevin Webster hadn't planned on telling ABI he had cancer. It had started as a desperate grasp for closeness, a flickering hope that a shared sense of urgency would mend the widening gulf between them. ABI had been drifting, emotionally absent despite being physically present. Their home echoed with silence, and Kevin had felt the distance deepening every day. So when he noticed ABI's concerned look over a mild test result, the temptation took hold. He had exaggerated the diagnosis, only intending to gain her attention for a moment. But that moment turned into days, then weeks. Each time he saw the fear in ABI's eyes, a part of him recoiled, but another part clung to the connection, twisted as it was. What Kevin hadn't anticipated was how many people would be drawn into the orbit of his lie. Debbie, his sister, was among the first to react. She became unusually attentive, shuffling her schedule to spend more time with Kevin. He didn't discourage her, he couldn't. He allowed the lie to live, to fester. And with each passing day, it grew heavier. But what Kevin couldn't see, at least not yet, was how deeply this lie had begun to affect Debbie. As days passed, Debbie's behavior began to shift. Once confident and sharp-tongued, she now wandered through conversations, occasionally forgetting names or repeating the same story twice in one morning. It began subtly, a misplaced phone, an appointment forgotten, but gradually, it escalated into a fog that settled over her mind. Those close to her started to worry, but Debbie brushed it off with nervous laughter and feigned nonchalance. Ronnie noticed first. He'd grown fond of Debbie, despite their frequent squabbles and her fierce independence. When he brought up her forgetfulness, she snapped, claiming he was exaggerating. But the fear was real and undeniable. Debbie wasn't herself. Still, she buried her worries and poured her energy into something she could control, buying the house at number 6. The house had come up for sale suddenly. Carla, quick and ambitious, saw the opportunity and made an offer. But Debbie wasn't about to lose. She claimed it was for business, another property to flip or lease, but that wasn't the whole truth. Her real motive was deeply personal. She wanted to be near Kevin. If his time was truly limited, she couldn't bear to be distant, not physically, not emotionally. Ronnie tried to intervene. He urged Debbie to reconsider, to let Carla have the house. He argued logic, finance, the toll it was taking on her. But when he mentioned Kevin's condition as a reason for letting go, something inside Debbie cracked. Her face contorted in disbelief and pain. How dare he? Didn't he see that this was about love, about family, about staying close through whatever time was left? That confrontation marked a turning point. Debbie lashed out, accusing Ronnie of betrayal. She felt abandoned, by him, by her mind, by a world that seemed to be unraveling. And Kevin watched from the shadows, guilt gnawing at his conscience like a relentless tide. It was during a quiet moment in the garage, when Kevin overheard a tense conversation between Debbie and Ronnie. Words like cancer, hospital, and end of life echoed through the walls. He froze. The truth, or rather the lie, had extended its reach far beyond ABI. Debbie had taken it as truth, and her decisions were being shaped around it. Worse, the emotional strain might be contributing to her cognitive decline. That night, Kevin couldn't sleep. He lay awake, the ceiling above him as blank as his thoughts were stormy. He remembered the first time he and ABI had laughed after his diagnosis, the tears in her eyes, when she offered to rearrange her schedule to help him. And now, all of it felt like borrowed time, fake, stolen from the truth. The next morning, Kevin tried to speak with ABI. He stood in the kitchen, the confession on the tip of his tongue. But she kissed his cheek gently and told him she'd made an appointment with a specialist, just in case he needed a second opinion. She was hopeful. She was planning for his future. The words died in his throat. Elsewhere, Debbie's condition worsened. During a meeting at the bistro, she momentarily forgot where she was. She stumbled over simple details. Nick and Leanne exchanged worried glances. Debbie laughed it off again, but this time, it didn't land. Carla confronted her privately afterward, asking if she was okay, offering her support. Debbie bristled at the suggestion, insisting she was fine, just stressed. But the mask was slipping. Meanwhile, Ronnie was grappling with his own dilemma. He cared for Debbie deeply, but her refusal to acknowledge the problem, and the way she had shut him out, left him feeling helpless. He confided in Ed, who advised patience, but warned that Debbie might spiral further if left untreated. The battle over number 6 escalated. Carla increased her bid, leveraging her business ties. Debbie countered, draining more of her savings than was wise. Her judgment, once sharp and strategic, now seemed clouded. Kevin, caught in the middle, watched it all unfold with growing horror. He realized his lie had planted seeds of chaos, not just in his relationship with ABI, but in his sister's life and mental health. The weight of it became unbearable. Kevin stood in front of the mirror one morning, his reflection pale and aged by guilt. He practiced the words in silence, repeating them under his breath, "I don't have cancer. I lied." But when he turned from the mirror and saw ABI setting the breakfast table, cheerful, invested, it broke him again. Still, something had to change. Kevin couldn't keep living in this emotional purgatory. And so, he resolved to tell the truth, not just to ABI, but to everyone. The lie had metastasized like the very disease he'd faked. It had taken root in people's choices, their hearts, their futures. But timing, as always in Weatherfield, was never simple. Just as Kevin gathered the courage, Debbie collapsed during a heated argument with Carla outside the Rovers. Her eyes fluttered, her balance gone. Ronnie rushed to her side, and panic surged through the gathered crowd. ABI appeared moments later, breathless and terrified. Kevin stood frozen, realization dawning that his lie had pushed too far. It wasn't just about feelings anymore. Real lives were unraveling. As the ambulance arrived, Kevin whispered, more to himself than anyone else, "This is all my fault." The sirens faded into the distance as the ambulance carrying Debbie turned the corner. Ronnie stayed behind, shaken but trying to hold himself together, while ABI stood quietly, still trying to comprehend what she had just witnessed. Kevin remained rooted to the pavement outside the Rovers, guilt anchoring him in place like lead in his chest. At the hospital, doctors began running tests to understand the sudden collapse. With Debbie unconscious, the speculation intensified. Ronnie paced outside the examination room, hands clenched tightly. Carla had followed, her expression unreadable, but her concern genuine. When the nurse finally approached, the words she offered were vague: stress, neurological irregularities, the possibility of early-onset memory disorder. More tests were needed. Ronnie blamed himself. If he had insisted more forcefully on Debbie taking care of herself, if he hadn't let their argument get so intense, but the truth was more complex. Debbie had been crumbling slowly, and nobody, not even Kevin, had understood how deeply she was affected by everything happening around her. ABI sat beside Kevin in the waiting room. Her fingers lightly grazed his, seeking reassurance, but Kevin couldn't respond. He stared straight ahead, haunted. The lie had created fractures, too deep to hide now, and Debbie's condition made it impossible to keep playing along. "I need to tell you something," Kevin murmured, his voice hoarse. ABI turned to him, eyes full of worry. "What is it?" But before he could speak, a nurse called out for the family of Debbie Webster. ABI stood, pulling Kevin with her. The moment was lost again. Back on the street, Carla found herself trapped in an emotional bind. She hadn't meant to push Debbie so far. The house at number 6 was just another property, until it wasn't. Now, with Debbie hospitalized and Ronnie barely speaking to her, Carla began to reassess her priorities. She had fought hard for business dominance, but this felt like a hollow victory. Ronnie finally returned to the street the next morning, worn down and still in yesterday's clothes. He hadn't slept. Debbie had woken briefly, disoriented, unsure of where she was. The doctors remained non-committal. Kevin met him at the door, but Ronnie's look cut through any attempt at small talk. "Was it worth it?" Ronnie asked, his voice low but loaded. Kevin hesitated. "I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted any of it." Ronnie didn't respond. He brushed past Kevin and disappeared inside. That afternoon, ABI found Kevin in the garage. He was sitting on the floor behind the workbench, surrounded by tools and a thick silence. She closed the door behind her. "You're scaring me," she said softly. "You look like you haven't slept in days." Kevin lifted his head. His eyes were rimmed red, but dry. "Because I haven't. Because I've been lying to you." ABI froze. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not sick," Kevin said, finally. "I don't have cancer. I never did." The silence that followed was brutal. ABI's lips parted slightly, but no words came. Her expression shifted through disbelief, confusion and finally, anger. "What do you mean?" Kevin stood. "I made it up. At first, I needed you to care. I was scared we were losing each other. It was stupid and selfish, and I never meant for it to go this far. But then everyone else got involved, and Debbie. God, ABI, I didn't know how to undo it." ABI stepped back, crossing her arms. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You lied about dying, to get my attention." "I was desperate," Kevin admitted. "But everything spiraled out of control." She didn't slap him. She didn't scream. That might have been easier. Instead, she simply turned around and walked out of the garage without another word. By nightfall, news of Kevin's confession had started to spread. Ronnie was the next to know, and it took all of Ed's intervention to keep him from driving straight to Kevin's house to confront him. What kind of man lets his own sister believe he's dying? Ronnie said through clenched teeth. She put her whole life on hold for him. He knows he's wrong, Ed replied. But we've got bigger things to worry about now. Debbie's condition, this could be long-term. Ronnie nodded. And here's the reason it got this bad. Meanwhile, Carla decided to back off the property deal entirely. She spoke with her solicitor and formally withdrew her offer on number 6, telling herself it was to ease tensions. But deep down, she knew she'd crossed a line. Some victories weren't worth winning. At the hospital, Debbie began showing more signs of cognitive decline. The doctors confirmed it. She was experiencing early symptoms of a neurological disorder, possibly linked to stress and trauma. The episodes were not yet consistent enough for a full diagnosis, but the outlook wasn't promising. Kevin came to see her the next day. She was awake, alert, and surprisingly calm. "I heard," she said before he even sat down. Kevin swallowed hard. "Debs. I'm sorry. You should be." There was no venom in her voice. Just sadness. Resignation. "I thought I was doing the right thing," Kevin said quietly. "You were doing the cowardly thing," she corrected. "You lied because you were afraid to lose ABI. And now I'm here." And Ronnie won't speak to me. And my mind, it's slipping. Don't you get it? You didn't just lie to ABI. You lied to all of us. Kevin lowered his head. I want to make it right. Debbie looked out the window. Then stop thinking about what you want. And start thinking about what we all need. Kevin did start to change. In the days that followed, he told the full truth to the few who hadn't yet heard. He stood in front of Rita, Sally, even Tim, and admitted his wrongdoing. Some were stunned, others angry, but most just disappointed. Trust once broken was not so easily repaired. ABI moved out for a while. She needed space. She needed to find her center again, and being near Kevin made that impossible. Still, she checked in on Debbie, brought her flowers at the hospital, and offered her presence even when words were hard to find. Ronnie took over coordinating Debbie's care, making sure she had follow-ups scheduled and support in place. He stayed by her side even when she struggled to remember his name for a fleeting moment. It hurt, but he stayed. Carla made a quiet peace offering, covering some of the hospital bills under the pretense of a business-related expense. Debbie didn't accept, but she also didn't lash out. That silence was enough. Weeks passed. Kevin began attending counseling sessions. He opened up to a therapist about the insecurities that led him down this path. About feeling irrelevant, growing old, the fading closeness between him and ABI. He started volunteering at a local cancer center, trying to give back in the most honest way he could. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was a step. One day, while visiting Debbie during a quiet moment in the garden of the rehab center, Kevin asked her, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" Debbie didn't look at him right away. Then she smiled faintly. "Maybe. But not today." Kevin nodded. "I'll be here tomorrow." She glanced sideways at him, a flicker of the old sarcasm in her eyes. "You better be." ABI, meanwhile, returned to the garage, not to reconcile, but to work. She wanted her own space. Kevin respected that. They began building a new kind of relationship, slowly, carefully, and without expectations. Every word was deliberate. Every shared glance carried weight. There was no big reunion, no sweeping gesture of forgiveness. Just time. And effort. Debbie's condition remained unpredictable. Some days were better than others. But she fought. She clung to her independence with every ounce of strength. Ronnie never left her side. And Kevin. He learned to live with the consequences of his lie, not to bury it. He accepted that some things couldn't be fixed quickly. That sometimes, love was not about keeping someone close through deceit, but letting them go until they could return on their own terms. For now, the street held its breath. And life, however fragile, moved forward. But the scars would remain, for all of them. And so would the questions they never thought they'd have to ask.